Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand the origin and meaning of the word democracy. Explain why democracy is the most popular form of government today. Explain in detail the causes that led to the rise of democracy in the last few decades. Compare democratic and non-democratic governments. Explain in detail the features of a democracy. Understand and describe the aims of a good democracy. Meaning of democracy. The word democracy originated from a Greek word, demokratia. In Greek, demos means people and kratia means rule. Together, it means a rule by the people. In other words, democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. It is the most popular form of government today. Every government in the world today wants to be recognized as a democratic government, but every government that holds an election is not democratic in the real sense of the word. The only factor common to all democracies is that the government is chosen by the people. Comparison between democratic and non-democratic government. In a non-democratic government, citizens do not have a right to vote. The set of people who choose their representatives and the powers enjoyed by these representatives may not be the same in all democracies. A non-democratic government is not accountable to its citizens. Either dictatorship or army rule prevails in a non-democratic government. In a non-democratic government, either the elections are not held or even if held, they are not fair. These traits distinguish a purely democratic government from a non-democratic government. The army rule in Myanmar, Dictator General Pinochet's rule in Chile, President Nkrumah's rule in Ghana, or the communist rule in Poland were not democratic. These rulers were not chosen by the people. The kings of Nepal or Saudi Arabia are hereditary kings who rule because they were born into royal families. Features of democracy. 1. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. In clear violation of this feature in Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf overthrew a democratically elected government and came to power through a military coup. He amended the legal framework order to obtain the power to dismiss provincial and national assemblies. The elected representatives had minimal power. Most of it rested with the general and the military. A democracy must be based on free and fair elections. The ruling party must have a fair chance of losing that election. But elections held in China and Mexico are not fair. Every 5 years, China holds elections of its parliament, the National People's Congress. To contest, all candidates need approval of the Chinese Communist Party. In 2002-2003 elections, only members of the Chinese Communist Party and 8 allied parties were allowed to contest. The government is always formed by the Communist Party. Since 1930, Mexico has been holding presidential elections every 6 years. Till 2000, only a party called PRI, or Institutional Revolutionary Party, won through coercive methods. Features of democracy 2. In a democracy, each person should have one vote and his vote should have equal value. Unfortunately, in Estonia, it is difficult for Russian minority to get to vote. In Fiji, the votes of indigenous Fijians carry more value compared to Indian Fijians. These countries deny the political equality to its citizens, which is against the fundamental principle of political equality of democracy. A democratic government rules within the limits which are set by constitutional laws and citizens' rights. Zimbabwe holds elections regularly, but its governance is most undemocratic. Robert Mugabe, the leader of ZANU-PF party, led the freedom struggle and attained independence of Zimbabwe in 1980 from the white minority. Since then, Robert Mugabe has been ruling the country. He is a popular leader but uses unfair means to win elections. He has made innumerable amendments in the Constitution to increase his power as president and make him less accountable to people. The press and people do not have the freedom to express opposition to the government. Mugabe works in an autocratic way. A democratic government cannot work by its whims and fancies. It needs to consult the people's representatives while taking major decisions. It has to be accountable to its people and independent officials and respect the fundamental rights of the citizen. Why democracy? Merits of democracy. Since a democratic government is accountable to its citizens, it is a better form of government. Before arriving at any decision, a number of people are consulted. It enhances the chances of making a quality decision. Democracy provides a method to deal with conflicts and differences in any amicable manner. In a country like ours, with wide social diversity, democracy is the only way to maintain peace and harmony. Democracy enhances a citizen's dignity as all citizens, regardless of their economic status or education, are treated alike. Democracy is better than other forms of government because it allows us to correct its own mistakes. Demerits of democracy. Democracy is said to create instability as the leaders keep changing frequently. Democracy involves power play and political competition. It leaves no scope for morality. Decisions in a democracy are delayed as a number of people have to be consulted beforehand. Elected leaders are not acquainted with real interests of the people. It leads to bad decisions. Democracy widens the scope of corruption as it is based on an electoral competition. Ordinary people do not have a clear understanding of what is good for them. They do not make a wise choice always. Broader meaning of democracy. So far, we have understood democracy in a limited and descriptive sense. In its basic sense, democracy refers to a method of decision-making through consensus and equal participation by all. We understand democracy as a form of government. The commonest form of democracy in the world today is representative democracy. Even in a democracy, all the people do not rule. A majority is allowed to take decisions. The majority, too, does not rule directly. It leaves the decision-making process to the elected representatives. The majority of people opt to rule through elected representatives because the number of people in all modern democracies is so large that it is impossible for all to sit together and arrive at a decision through consensus. Even if it is made possible somehow, every person may not have the intelligence, skill, or expertise to make a wise and apt decision. Also, everyone may not have enough time or desire to participate in a decision-making process. Aims of a good democracy. A good democracy can be established when no one goes hungry to the bed. A true democracy allows every citizen to play an equal role in decision-making without discrimination. For this, along with equal right to vote, every citizen needs to have equal information, basic education, equal resources, and a lot of commitment. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. In the Greek word democracy, demos means people and kratia means rule. Together, it means a rule by the people. Broadly, there are two forms of government: democratic and non-democratic government. In democracy, decision-making power rests with those elected by the people. In a free and fair election in a democracy, the ruling party must have a fair chance to lose the elections. In a democracy, each person should have one vote and his vote should have equal value. A democratic government rules within the limits which are set by the constitutional laws and citizens' rights. Democracy has its own merits and demerits. In a democracy, people opt to rule through elected representatives because the number of people in all modern democracies is so large that it is impossible for all to sit together and arrive at a decision through consensus. A true democracy allows every citizen to play an equal role in decision-making without discrimination.